Good afternoon, dear student. I hope you people are fit and fine. The last component of Unit 3rd of our syllabus is criminal intimidation, insult and annoyance. So today I am going to discuss about this offense of criminal intimidation. Section 503 to 510, 503 से 510 of Indian Penal Code incorporates the offences of criminal intimidation, insult and annoyance. The Indian Penal Code deals with those acts which are meant to intimidate or threaten others or to cause annoyance or insult to others in such a way that the act in turn provokes others to break the law and cause a breach of peace in the present. Cause a breach of peace. This chapter of IPC deals with three varieties of offences, namely criminal intimidation, causing insult and annoyance, arranged between section 503 to 510. The sections can be analysed as follows: 503 definition of criminal intimidation, 506 punishment for criminal intimidation, 507 and 508 criminal intimidation through annoyance through anonymous communication and criminal inducement, section 504 definition of intentional insult to provoke breach of peace, 505 public mischief, 509 insult to the modesty of a woman, and 510 misconduct in public place by a drunken person. These 9 sections, based on the offences dealt therein, can further be regrouped into 3 clusters, namely sections dealing with criminal intimidation, intentional insult, and annoyance. So first is criminal intimidation. Section 503 defines the offence of criminal intimidation and 506 prescribe the punishment of it, while 507 and 508 deal with punishment for aggravated forms of criminal intimidation. Section 503 say that whoever threatens another with any injury to his person, reputation or property, or to the person or reputation of anyone in whom that person is interested, with intent to cause alarm to that person or to cause that person to do any act which he is not legally bound to do, or to omit to do any act which that person is legally entitled to do, as the means of avoiding the execution of such threat, commits criminal intimidation. Explanation: a threat to injure the reputation of any deceased person in whom the person threatened is interested is within this section. The essential ingredients are as follows. Section 503, which defines the offence of criminal intimidation, describe the following essentials. First, there should be a threat of injury to a person, to his person, reputation or property, or to the person or reputation of anyone in whom that person is interested. Second, the threat must be with the intent to cause alarm to that person, to cause that person to do an act which he is not legally bound to do, as the means of avoiding the execution of such threat, or to cause that person to omit to do any act which that person is legally entitled to do, as the means of avoiding the execution of such threat. In simple terms, what the offence defines is that if any person threatens another with injury to his person, property or reputation, and to avoid that the other person is made to do an act he is not legally bound to do, or to omit to do something he is bound to do, or which caused alarm to that person, then that person is said to have committed criminal intimidation. In short, it is extending a threat to another which results in a particular set of actions from the other as a means of avoiding the threat. However, a mere threat does not amount to criminal intimidation. It must be made with intent to cause alarm to the person threatened. It is immaterial whether it has alarmed the recipient of the threat. The scope of the section was elaborated by the Supreme Court in Ramesh Chandra Arora versus State. In this case, the appellant accused had been charged with criminal intimidation by threatening a person X and his daughter of injury to their reputation by making public a nude photograph of the daughter unless hush money was paid to him. The intent was to cause alarm to them. The evidence, however, disclosed that the real intention was not merely cause alarm but to force X to pay hush money. The accused was convicted for the offence of 506 IPC but by the trial court, which was confirmed by the High Court. However, in the Supreme Court it was his contention that if at all he had committed an offence, it was not under section 506 IPC but one under 384 read with 511, and since he was charged with this offence, he ought to be acquitted. The Supreme Court did not accept this contention, and court stated that the aim of the accused was not just to cause alarm but to cause the father of X to give him hush money to ensure that he didn't go ahead with his threat of making public the damaging photographs. The court also considered the fact that the offence committed could also be considered to fall under the offence of extortion under section 383. There might be instances in which a particular act may be said to fall under two broad definitions of offences when two different aspects of the act are considered separately. Nature of the threat extended. The threat may be a direct threat. It may not be in the presence of the complainant. Whether the threat did or did not frighten any person will not affect the question of liability of the accused person under this section. Thus, if a speaker at a public meeting threatened the members of the police force stationed in the Malabar with injury to their person, reputation or property, then he was said to have committed the offence of criminal intimidation. Nature of injury, that is nature of injury threatened. In order to be liable for criminal intimidation, the injury threatened to be caused must be illegal. Therefore, a notice requiring a shopkeeper to agree not to import for sale in his shop foreign clothes for a year, together with the threat that in the case he continued to sell foreign clothes, his shop would be picketed, was held to amount to an offence of criminal intimidation. Punishment for criminal intimidation is: whoever commits the offence of criminal intimidation shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 2 years, or with fine, or with both. And if the threat be to cause death or grievous hurt, then or to cause the destruction of any property by fire, or to cause an offence punishable with death or imprisonment for life, or with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 7 years, or to impute unchastity to a woman shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 7 years. A bare reading of section 506 discloses that the punishment prescribed in this section falls in the following two categories. First, in simple case of criminal intimidation, 2 years, fine, or both. And in second, if the threat to cause death of the threatened person, or grievous hurt or destruction of property by fire, or to cause an offence to be committed which is punishable with death or life imprisonment, or with imprisonment for a term up to 7 years, or to impute unchastity to a woman, then prescribed punishment is imprisonment of either description for a term up to 7 years. Part 2 compared to Part 1 of the section deal with punishment for graver form of criminal intimidation. Now, section 507 to 508 deal with criminal intimidation through synonymous and anonymous communication. As per 507, whoever commits the offence of criminal intimidation by an anonymous communication or having taken precaution to conceal the name or abode of the person from whom the threat comes shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 2 years in addition to the punishment provided for the offence by the last preceding section. Section 508 contemplates the voluntary causing of any person or to do thing which he is not legally bound to do, or omitting to do a thing which he is legally entitled to do, by inducing that person to believe that he or any person in whom he is interested will become an object of divine displeasure if he does not do the thing in the manner it dictated. The section read as under. And the punishment is up to 1 year or with fine. An illustration of 508 is that suppose A sits in a dharna at Z's door with the intention of causing it to be believed that by so sitting he renders Z an object of divine displeasure. A has committed the offence defined in this section. A threatens Z unless Z performs a certain act. A will kill one of A's children under such circumstances that the killing would be believed to render Z an object of divine displeasure. A has committed the offence defined in this section. Another part of this chapter is intentional insult. Section 504 say that whoever intentionally insults and thereby gives provocation to any person, intending or knowing it to be likely that such provocation will cause him to break the public peace or to commit any other offence, shall be punished with imprisonment of either description for a term which may extend to 2 years or with fine. Essential ingredients of this section is as under. First, the accused person must intentionally insult another person, which is such that it provokes another person. And third is, there must be the intention or knowledge that such provocation will cause that person to break the public peace or to commit any other offense. Nature of intentional insult. An act of insulting another by itself does not amount to an offense unless it contains the essential ingredient which makes it an offense, namely the intention or knowledge that the insult would provoke another person to cause breach of the peace or commit another offense. In Ramesh Kumar versus Susila Srivastava, Rajasthan High Court held that the way in which the accused addressed the complaint was such that per se goes to show that the person has been insulted and provocation has been caused to him. Thus, the term insult signified to treat with offensive disrespect, to offer indignity to. Such insult may be inferred not merely from the words used, but also from the tone and manner in which the words are spoken. Further clarification of what constitutes intentional insult is provided in Abraham vs. State of Kerala, in which it was clarified that mere breach of good manners does not constitute an offence. What is essential to make out an offence under this section is not just the reaction of the complainant, for that would depending on the sensitiveness of each individual, but the intention of the offender knowing that such provocation would likely result in the person provoked to commit an offense. And the point is that abusive words. In deciding whether a particular language is abusive enough to fall within the ambit of this section, the court trying the offense has to find out what in ordinary circumstances would be an effect of the abusive language used, and not what the complainant actually did as a result of the alleged abusive language, as the response would vary from person to person depending on the personal sensitivities or idiosyncrasies of the person. This issue came to be considered in Philip Rangel versus Emperor. What happened in this case? The accused was a shareholder of the Central Telegraph Office Credit Cooperative Bank Limited and was one of the 26 shareholders who had requisitioned for a special meeting of the shareholder. In the meeting, there was proposal to expel the accused and other persons who had requisitioned their meeting. To this, the accused reacted by shouting, "You damn bloody bastard," and cards while leaving the meeting. The Bombay High Court had to consider whether this amounted to intentional insult. Court clarified that when the charge is an insult by words, the word must amount to something more than what in English law is called mere verbal abuse. If abusive language is used in such circumstances, that the court comes to the conclusion that it cannot possibly have been intended and cannot have been understood by those to whom it was addressed to have been intended to be taken literally, the language cannot be held to amount to intentional insult. Another point is use of obscene word held to be offense of intentional insult. For example, use of words like sala, haramjada, sewer, baper peta, obscene words used by a landlord to a woman near a water tap. Use of word sala followed by threats of shoe beating continue an offense under this section. Calling a counsel badmas in open court also amounts to an intentional insult. Intention or knowledge that insult would cause breach of peace or committing offense. It is not essential for this section to be applied that there must actually be a breach of peace. As the section itself stipulates, the essential component in the intention of the offender to provoke breach of peace or knowledge on his part that the provocation is given by him is likely to cause the commission of any other offense. The threat of breach of peace must also be immediately after the provocation or so soon thereafter that it must form part of res geste of the offense. In dealing with an offense under the section, the court has not to consider the reaction of the person insulted to the insult made to him. An intentional insult and the resultant provocation, which under ordinary circumstances would lead to breach of the public peace or an offense to be committed by the person insulted, would render the offender liable under his section, and he would not be protected from the consequences of his act merely because the insulted person exercised self-control or being terrified by the insult or overawed by the person of the offender did not actually break the peace or commit an offense. Section 505 talks about public mischief, statements conducting to public mischief. Whoever makes, publishes or circulates any statement, rumor or report with intent to cause or which is likely to cause any officer, soldier, sailor or airman in the army, navy, air force of India to mutiny or otherwise disregard or fail in his duty as such, or with intent to cause or which is likely to cause fear or alarm to the public or to any section of the public whereby any person may be induced to commit an offense against the state or against the public tranquility, or with the intent to incite or which is likely to incite any class or community of persons to commit any offense against any other class or community shall be punished with imprisonment which may extend to 3 years or with fine. Subsection 2 say that whoever makes, publishes or circulates any statement or report containing rumor or alarming news with intent to create or promote or which is likely to create or promote on ground of religion, race, place of birth, residence, language, caste or community or any other ground whatsoever, feelings of enmity, hatred or ill will between different religious, racial, language or regional groups or caste or communities shall be punished with imprisonment which may extend to 3 years or with fine or with both. And subsection 3 of 505 says that whoever commits an offense specified in subsection 2 in any place of worship or in any assembly engaged in the performance of religious worship or religious ceremonies shall be punished with imprisonment which may extend to 5 years or shall also be liable to fine. Exceptions say that it does not amount to an offense within the meaning of this section when the person making, publishing or circulating any such statement, rumor or report has reasonable ground for believing that such statement, rumor or report is true and makes, publishes or circulates in good faith and without any such intent or aforesaid. This section is general in character and deal with dissemination of false and mischievous news with intent to create public disturbances. So there are two essential dimensions of this section. First, situations in which the publication is likely to cause mutiny among soldiers, army men, navy, etc. Second, where the publication is likely to cause common commotion amongst the public, inducing someone to commit an offense against the state or public tranquility. The constitutional validity of Section 505 and 124 AIPC as violative of the right to freedom of speech and expression was questioned in Kedarnath case. However, the Supreme Court held that with reference to the three clauses of this section, it would be found that government gravamen of the offence is making, publishing or circulating any state rumor or report with intent to cause any member of the army, etc., mutiny or disregard or fail in his duty, to cause fear or alarm to the public, or to incite or which is likely to incite one class or community to commit an offense against any other. So Supreme Court said it is a manifest that each one of the constituent elements of the offense under 505 has a reference to and a direct effect on the security of the state and public order. The court thus declared that the section didn't exceed the bounds of reasonable restriction on the right of freedom of speech and expression. Section 509 talk about word, gesture or act intended to insult the modesty of a woman. Whoever intending to insult the modesty of a woman utters any word, makes any sound or gesture or exhibit any object intending that such word or sound shall be heard, or that such gesture or object shall be seen by such woman, or intrudes upon the privacy of such women, shall be punished with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 1 year, or with fine, or with both. So words or gesture intended to insult the modesty of women falls within the ambit of this section. So essential ingredient of the section are as follows. First, where an offender utters a word, makes any sound or gesture, or exhibit any object. Second, with the intention that it be heard, seen, or intrudes upon the privacy of such women, commits the offense. It is clear that intention must be to insult the modesty of some particular woman or women, and not merely any class or section of women, however small. Even if the exact word could not be placed on record, if the court arrives at a finding that the accused had such an intention for which purpose he uttered the offending words, it can punish the accused. An important difference between an offense under 509 and one under 50 is that the latter offense, the exact word spoken or uttered by the accused must be set out right at the beginning. However, for the offense under 509, it is sufficient if the intention can be gathered from the evidence. The exact word need not be proved. Where an accused sent a letter by post containing indecent overtures to an unmarried nurse having no previous acquaintance with him, it was held that accused had intended to outrage the modesty of the woman by exhibiting the object, and the fact that it was in a closed envelope before it reached the lady was immaterial. It is not necessary that the offender himself should personally exhibit the object. He may employ an agent such as the post office for this purpose. What constitutes insult to modesty of a woman? The Supreme Court in the state of Punjab versus Major Singh considered the question of what modesty means. When can it be held that a particular act is said to have outraged the woman's modesty, and whether the modesty of an infant child can be outraged at all? This case involved a 7.5-month-old female child. The offender was alleged to have got into the room where the child was sleeping, put off the lights, stripped himself up to his waist, and gave vent to his unnatural lust, thereby rupturing the hymen of infant child and causing a tear 3.4 long inside the vagina of the child. The trial court was of the view that there could be no offence under 354 as an infant child was incapable of developing a sense of modesty. Accused was only sentenced for an offence under 323 IPC. On the appeal, the High Court, a bench of 3 judges, heard the case. Majority of 2 judges also supported this view that an infant cannot be said to have a sense of modesty and hence the offence was not punishable. However, in the appeal, Supreme Court too, there was a division among 3 judges bench. A majority of 2 judges, R. Madholkar and Justice R.S. Bachawat, held that act offended to outrage the modesty, and the third judge, A.K. Sarkar, decided that such acts against infants cannot be held to be offence of outraging the modesty. According to the majority view, the act of outraging the modesty of a woman was not limited by the age of the victim, and whether the victim knew or was conscious about the offensive act being committed on her. The following are the principles evolved by 2 judges who delivered the majority judgment that the offender had committed an offence of outraging the modesty of the infant. And last is annoyance. Under section 510, misconduct in public by a drunken person. So whoever in a state of intoxication appears in any public place or in any place which it is a trespass in him to enter and there conduct himself in such a manner as to cause annoyance to any person shall be punished with simple imprisonment for a term which may extend to 24 hours or with fine which may extend to 10 rupees or with both. Section 510 covers the act of intoxicated person which causes annoyance to other and general public. It should be noted that only an intoxicated person who causes annoyance is covered, and mere intoxication is not sought to be covered by the section. The nature of the annoyance may be causing annoyance in public or refusing to leave a place where he has no right to enter without permission of the owner. It is important to note that no mens rea is required for this offence. It is, however, significant to note that section 34 of the Police Act also provides punishment for drunken man who causes public annoyance. However, there is a significant difference between 34 of the Police Act and 510 of IPC. The outer limit of fine provided under the former is 50, while that under section 510 is rupees 10. The maximum term of punishment is under the former is up to 8 days, while the maximum imprisonment under the latter can only be 24 hours. So this was the last part of third unit, that is the criminal intimidation, insult and annoyance, and it completes. And in next lecture I will start unit 4. Thank you very much.